I was the strongest man on the planet, and I felt it. I was convulsing, so I was like in and out of consciousness. Blood was just fucking everywhere, and then backstage just suffered the consequences, and they were bad.
Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn the notification bell on. So when you were halfway through your world record deadlift and your nose started to bleed, can you remember that moment and how you felt?
Yeah, so, I mean, the half-ton deadlift, so regardless what people think, I'd never lifted above 460 kilos before that day. Never. So...
Is it true you did the two lifts that day, or really close?
Yeah. So the most I ever lifted in the gym was 450. The most I'd ever lifted in the competition was 460. So I was coming into that competition that day, and I claimed that I was going to beat the world record by 37 kilo in one day, which was obscene. It was obscene. You know, it had been broken by 1 kilo a year every year for 20 years, you know. So for me to add 37 kilo on in one day was just like, it was deemed impossible by so many people.
Yeah.
So I suppose when I lifted it and it started to, you know, as soon as I got past my knees and I'm at the halfway point, I guess it was just that not a feeling of like, fuck you to everyone, but like a feeling of like, there you go. You know, if you really want something, if you put your heart and soul into something in life, you can achieve it. And it was just such a satisfying moment. The last few inches of the deadlift, I was just looking.
You were just showing it.
Just looking at the crowd, just like so pleased with myself.
Yeah.
Because there was so much negativity. There was so many people saying it was impossible. You know, the promoters of strongman said it was impossible. The other strongman said it was impossible. I was very vocal on social media, and I'd say 99% of the fans said it was impossible. So I was just fighting this brick wall of negativity. Just like, it's not going to happen. You're an idiot. You're a dick. You're deluded. Blah 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 blah. So that was a nice moment for me to prove all those people wrong and pull that 500 kilo deadlift.
And was that the motivation then? Did it become about proving people wrong?
It was a big part of it, I'll be honest. You know, if someone says you can't do something, I'm going to try my hardest to prove those people wrong. And it's almost, it does light a little fire in your belly, you know. And I think every single comment, every single like negative word and passing comment, whatever you see, it's just throwing a piece of coal on.
Yeah.
And that's how I saw it. Every time I'd see something, I'd just get more riled up, like, right. It would make me genuinely train harder and focus more and eat better and recover better. You know, it really did focus me in.
How did you prepare your mind to go in that day knowing that you've nowhere near lifted this before and not let the doubts creep in?
Yeah.
I mean, did you know that day you were going to do it? Or was there any doubts?
Of course there's doubts, but I just joked myself that much. I kidded myself that much that I had to believe it, you know? I said the most I ever lifted in the gym was 450. And any time I went above that, my head would fall off.
What does head fall off mean?
Like, I'd lose faith before I'd even try to lift it.
I see, yeah.
You know, and then I'd go to lift it and I'd break the ground and fail and I think it's because my mind just wasn't there. My mind kept telling me this was impossible. And I had to do a load of research. I spoke to a lot of universities, a lot of scientists, blood doctors, everything else. Bear in mind, I had a year to prep, and it was a scientist that broke it down for me. He's like, Luke, he's like, you aren't going to lift this. It's like the only way the human body can lift this kind of weight is if you trigger the fight or flight scenario. And it's been proven of like people have car accidents and mothers lift, you know, cars off of the kids and fathers have like done amazing things to protect the children and, you know. And that's the instant he gave to me. He's like, you've got to put yourself in this kind of scenario. You've got to release that massive dump of adrenaline to get access to all your muscle fibers. And what really like made me understand it was, he said a day-to-day person, someone who takes the kids to school, goes to work, does a bit of shopping, picks the kids up and goes home, you know, and watches TV all night. That person's probably got access to 50, 60% of the muscle fibers at most. someone who's more in tune with the body, like an athlete who's using the body every day, coordination, you know, activating those muscle fibers, they've probably got access to about 70-75% of the muscle fibers at most. But a mother who's been in a car crash and the kids are trapped under a car, that massive dump of adrenaline, they've got access to 100% of the muscle fibers, and they can outstrength like a strong man who's only got 50%. And that's when that was like a flick switch moment for me. I was like, wow, okay. So I've got to go to a dark place. And then I recruited a hypnotherapist who we did a lot of work together, a lot of sitting down and just talking about scenarios and ways to approach the lift and what sort of mind frame to have. And we got to a point where we discussed a scenario, a very horrible, very, very horrible scenario involving my kids, and something that would trigger a massive rush of adrenaline.
Can you share that?
No,
No.
I can't. We're not without getting upset.
Yeah.
And so what we had to do was, just before I do this lift, I'm sort of just... So not a lot of people know this. Before I did the 500 kg deadlift, I'd locked myself in a disabled toilet for about 20 minutes. And I just had two pals in there with me, just talking, just bigging each other up, just fucking like, you're gonna do this. It's like, you know, to the point where, and then I did a trigger point with the hypnotherapist, or a pincher point in the back of my hand, and that brings all those feelings and emotions, rushed to my head. And I remember I didn't open the door, I kicked the door open from this disabled toilet. And I just walked out, got my suit on, and just walked up and lifted it. And I felt like I could walk on water. That's how high I was. That's how, that massive rush of adrenaline. And then when I got my hands on the bar and I closed my eyes, that's when I was like, my mind just went into a different dimension almost. I wasn't Eddie Hall lifting that weight in the arena. I was Eddie Hall in a different place, you know, in this scenario. And I closed my eyes, and if you watch the footage of me lifting, my eyes are shut, and then halfway up they just open, and I can't see anything. But you look into my eyes and tell me they didn't change colour. You tell me that, because they fucking do. And then I stand up, and then I sort of finish the lift, and it's like, ding, like back in the room, and it's just like, fucking hell. Like it was literally an out of body experience. You sort of like, yeah, I wasn't in the arena, my head was somewhere else. And then when I completed the lift, it was like, shoo, back in the room. It was quite surreal, and it's quite hard for people to comprehend, but this is the scenario I had to do.
Yeah. And you wouldn't have lifted that weight if you hadn't have gone to that place. You'd have lifted 460, 465, do you think?
Probably not on that day. I think I was strong enough to lift 500 kilo.
Yeah.
That day, you know, bear in mind I was nowhere near my peak in 2016. I think it was the mind that lifted that weight for me rather than the body. But then a year later, 2017, I do feel as though I had peaked and my strength. You know, I remember I lifted 470 kilo in the final of World's Strongest Man after 12 events, and I stood up with it quicker than you can stand up out of a chair. And they asked me after the lift, like, Ed, you're on fire, mate. Like, what do you think you could lift right now? And I was like, 520, maybe a bit more.
Yeah.
Like, I just felt I was the strongest man on the planet, and I felt it. You know, again, I was sort of walking around that arena, and I felt like I was walking on water. You know, I felt. Horrible to say, but I just felt above everyone in terms of strength. Yeah. I just felt like in another world.
Did that lift not nearly kill you? I saw the documentary where it was really hard for you to breathe, and you had a compression, didn't you, in your spine?
Yeah. So, blacked out. So I did the lift, got the down call, stood there, enjoyed it for a bit. And then when I released, it was like that massive dump of blood just gets flushed all over the place. So I managed to unhook a hand and then just went. I was convulsing, so it was like in and out of consciousness. Have ever happened to you?
No, I watched it. Yeah.
So it's happened to me once or twice, and you sometimes get it. When you get lightheaded.
Yeah.
So if you go lightheaded and don't go to the floor, what will happen is you convulse, so you come in and out of consciousness, and that's your body's way of telling you to lie down to get the blood back to your head, sort of thing. Right. So I was in and out of consciousness, sort of convulsing all around, and then it took me I don't know, a minute to sort of like compose myself, get my breath. Blood was just fucking everywhere. And then did a little speech to the crowd, and then backstage just suffered the consequences, and they were bad. You know, I had just the pressure here was insane, all behind my eyes, behind my ears. I had what they call arc eye. So if you're like, I was welding in the past, so you get like, if you weld somewhere and look at it, then you look somewhere else, you're blind in that spot. So I had arc eye where wherever I looked, I was sort of blind in the middle of my vision. I could see the outside, but not the middle. So that was quite scary. Blood pressure was unreadable. It was well over the 200s. Heart rate was in the 200s as well. Just everything was just through the roof, and it was just had such a surge of adrenaline that my body just couldn't, it couldn't deal with it basically. So afterwards, it was just a horrible sort of traumatic sort of 20 minutes or so, just getting me to calm down, get me adrenaline back down, and get my blood pressure and heart rate back down. And it was a very worrying time because with all the blood that came out, I was proper like, has something popped, has something gone wrong? Because there's been instances where strength athletes have actually like burst aortic valves and blood's come up from the mouth and all sorts of shit. So I had some bad feelings, it's quite traumatic, but pulled through.
Is all that shit worth it?
People always say, if you could go back and do it again, what would you? And I'm like, yeah, but I'd probably add 10 kilo on. So, I definitely would go back and do it again, but I wouldn't take anything back. That's for sure. I wouldn't take anything back. Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And it all pans out in the end.
If you enjoyed this video with Eddie Hall, you can watch the full deep dive live interview right here. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn the notification bell on.